Hello students, today in English we will begin with Unit 2, Subunit 2.1 Invictus, written by William Ernest Henley. Introduction to the poet. William Ernest Henley was an influential English poet, critic and editor of the late Victorian era in England. Though he wrote several books of poetry, Henley is remembered most often for his 1875 poem Invictus and A Love by the Sea, a piece that remains in popular awareness. Theme of the poem. Invictus, meaning unconquerable or undefeated in Latin, is a poem by William Ernest Henley. The poem was written while Henley was in the hospital being treated for tuberculosis of the bone, also known as Pott's disease. He had this disease from a very young age. His foot had been amputated shortly before he wrote the poem. The theme of this poem is about courage in the face of death and holding on to one's own dignity despite the challenges life places before us. Summary of the poem. The poem comprises thoughts of the speaker whose life is overwhelmed by misery and pain. However, he knows that the best means of combating these situations is a strong will. He further says that his miserable life cannot conquer his soul as he is not afraid of the challenges and sufferings. He remains positive, composed, unbowed, and unafraid in every difficult situation. His optimism makes him the master of his fate and the captain of his soul. The speaker encourages readers to be dignified and determined. The use of strong imagery in the poem enables the reader to feel the undaunted courage and endurance of the speaker during his sufferings. Let us begin with warming up. Guess what the following symbolize and match the pairs. A tall mountain symbolizes strength and firmness. A dark night symbolizes deep distress. A rose symbolizes beauty. Sunrise symbolizes hope. A flying bird symbolizes freedom. Thunder symbolizes anger. Reading of the poem. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Explanation of the poem. In the opening line, out of the night that covers me, the word night represents pain and suffering. The speaker says that he is surrounded by pain, suffering, and hardships which he willingly endures. Although he is in a state of hopelessness and his future is as dark as a pit, which is referred to as hell, his whole world, which is referred to as pole to pole, is in darkness. He is grateful to God for his unconquerable soul, which is in his control. Though the poet is a victim of cruel circumstances or events which has grasped his life, he has never complained or expressed his grief on account of his unbearable sufferings. He has remained firm and determined and taken control of his life by fighting back courageously. He agrees that difficulties have made him bleed and suffer due to fate, but he has never bowed his head in defeat. Literary devices, also known as poetic devices or figures of speech. Metaphor. The figure of speech used in the title of the poem Invictus is an extended metaphor which implicitly represents pain. The second metaphor is used in the first line as out of the night that covers me. A night represents dark times and hardships of the poet. Personification. The line "out of the night that covers me" is also an example of personification. The poet has personified night, which has been given the human attribute or quality of covering itself. Night stands for the suffering that troubles him. In the second stanza, "in the fell clutch of circumstance" is an example of personification, where circumstance is personified to be clutching a wicked trap. The third example of personification is also used in the second stanza, "under the bludgeonings of chance," as if the chance is human who can be hit by someone. Assonance is a repetition of the vowel sounds in the same line, such as the sounds of A and U, which come in quick succession in black as "under the bludgeoning." Consonants is a repetition of consonant sounds, such as the sound of P in pit from pole to pole and B sound in bloody but unbowed. Simile is used in the second line of the poem, where it is stated that "black as a pit from pole to pole." He compares the darkness of night with his dark and woeful, which means painful, life. Alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of the same consonant sounds in the same lines of the poetry for poetic effect, such as the use of P sound in pit from pole to pole. In the fell clutch of circumstance, the sound of the letter C is repeated. My head is bloody but unbowed, the sound of the letter B is repeated.